Well, welcome to another episode of the GCC Testimony podcast, where I check out GCC's most wanted. No, I'm kidding.
I apologize for my appearance on the show. Preemptively apologize. So.
This one goes out to his family. He wishes to apologize to them. A lack of foresight on his part. Yeah. Anyway, this is Mike Monsarrat. How many years have y'all been coming here?
So I think we're coming up, coming up on 3 years.
Wow.
Or 4.
Good heavens.
Jen is really good with dates.
Okay.
So it's either 3 or 4.
Okay, this is like we need a phone a friend option.
Dude, I have no life.
Double check, honey. No, it's okay. If I had a nickel for all the times I had to think to myself, like, that's a great Rachel question.
Okay.
When people ask me details, and there's like, of course, my wife will ask me those questions, and she'll be like, "Well, did y'all talk about this? No. Did you ask about this? No. How are they? I don't know. It's just kind of like,
sure.
What'd you talk about? Movies?
Okay.
Like, I don't know, the culture? I mean,
Sure.
Anyway, so I'm sort of bringing in different people in the church as an opportunity for us to get to know each other in grace and see how God's been at work in our lives. And so I asked Mike if he'd stop by and share his testimony. Again, this is not just about, the watershed moment of justification where we get saved, but it can absolutely be part of the discussion on our sanctification journey and how God has continued to work on us in our faith and our walk with Him. So with that as sort of the intro, take it away.
Well, thank you for asking me to do this. Anytime you can share how God's worked in your life, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. So I've actually been very excited about this. And you get to share it with the pastor in the session, of course, but as far as sharing it just with the average member, you don't get to do that a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very thankful to be able to do this. I would say that I grew up in the church. I grew up in a Christian home, and I don't just use the term Christian lightly. We were at church, we were at the events. The Bible was in front of us. My parents, I look back on that and think they did keep the truth in front of us. And for that, I'm very grateful. I don't think anyone should disregard or take lightly if their parents raised them in the truth. It's such an advantage. And so I made a profession of faith when I was fairly young. I would say, again, 6 or 7. I feel like if I can get within a year of things...
Right.
that I get credit for that. So somewhere between 6 and 7.
At 4:53.
Yeah. Somewhere between when I was 1 and now I made, but no, it was around 6 or 7. I know I was in very early elementary school, and I do remember it very clearly that in conversations with my family, it became apparent to me that they were talking about being saved and going to heaven. And I knew I had never made that decision, and that I knew I would not be with them in heaven. And so as a young child, that's very scary. It makes you very sad. And so I prayed with my parents. I was baptized not long after that. And I look back on that, and I know that God was working and that things were starting. The one thing that concerns me as I look at my life from that moment on through middle school, high school, college, early adulthood, is it didn't change me. There was never a hunger to be in the truth. There was never a desire to reorient my life or my desires toward what God would want. In fact, there was very little thought as to, well, what does God want me to do? What would God have me do in this situation? What direction does He have for my life? I just went about my life very independently. It was about what I wanted, what I liked, where I saw myself. Those were the only factors that went into decision-making. The thought of having a quiet time was more of a burden, I would say, and something that you needed to check off on the list, but if you didn't, it really wasn't a big deal. I had already prayed the prayer. I had all the credits I needed. Yeah, I know. So that was kind of, I would say, a summary of my, if you want to use quotes, Christian life. If disaster happened, if real tragedy struck, there would be some prayers I would offer up, but minimal at best. And that was more just to make me feel better, honestly, than to get a clear direction.
God as the cosmic vending machine.
Yes.
Just like, I need something, please.
Yes,
So,
or I'm scared, I don't know what to do, I'll pray to you, and that'll make me feel better, and that's
Yeah.
enough.
Mhm.
And that's enough. So what happened that kind of restarted a spiritual desire, I would say, is I had graduated college, and I got my first job in Nashville. Great job. I was working at a bank. I had a nice little office downtown with a window that like overlooked 2nd Avenue. I wore a suit and tie, which is something I'd always wanted to do. I had a briefcase.
Never seen him.
I had
wear
a
suit and
briefcase.
tie. I feel like I'm hearing about a whole different life of this man. Sorry, continue.
Well, once I started praying, God, what's your will? He's like, Mike, you're done with suits.
Lose the suit.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
So, and I even had a briefcase. I don't really remember anything important being in it, but I wanted one, so I had one. Of
course.
Right? Yes, of course. It finished the
ensemble, yes.
I don't know what that means, but yes,
fine.
of course.
It's French. No one cares.
Okay. Yes, that's true. That's true. And I was miserable. I hated it. I hated the job. I hated going into my office. It smelled like burnt coffee. The commute was terrible. I didn't have any friends at that point. And so I had gotten everything I wanted, and I hated it. I was miserable. And I remember praying in those moments similar prayers of, I don't feel well, I don't like this, I'm not happy, can you fix this, can you do something about this? And nothing happened, nothing changed, there wasn't even really any comfort offered. And I remember it was winter, so everything's bleak anyway, right? Like everything's dead. And I remember looking out the window in my apartment and like all the trees are dead and the grass is dead. And it was one of those moments where you're just thinking, I'm thinking to myself, are these prayers even going anywhere? Are they just going out into the air and reverberating around in space, and nothing's there? It was the first time I'd ever questioned God's existence that I can remember in my life. And it wasn't that I was like thinking, oh, well, evidence points to you're not real, as much as you're not giving me what I want. Are you really there? Which I think exposed why I had kind of held on to Christianity. And he didn't answer. He didn't do anything. He didn't say anything. And then you start to get angry and think, you could do something about this and you're not. Don't you see I'm struggling and you're not stepping in? And so it turned from, is anyone hearing this, to, and if you are, I don't know that I like that you're not doing anything. So it was just all these emotions wrapped up. And it was not long after that, I met Jen.
I was going to ask you where she was in this timeline.
Yep.
Okay.
Some friends of ours introduced us, and
she met the suit and tie version of you.
Well, yes.
Ooh.
Yes, she did.
All right.
Unimpressive, though. I have to say, like, the suit and tie version is even less unimpressive than this
What
version.
you're describing is like the plot of a Disney film, but continue, but more Christian.
Okay.
I got everything I wanted.
That's the meanest thing you've ever said to me.
I assure you, our friendship is young.
I just got to be honest. So some friends introduced us, and at that point you're desperate, and so that has nothing to do with meeting Jennifer. Let me add context.
Best thing that ever happened to us. That's what he said.
Let me add context.
We'll cut all of this.
Meaning, I'd eliminated some things in my life, like TV, some other things, which I think is why she stuck around, because she saw someone thinking, I think this guy's pretty spiritually deep, and when it wasn't, I was spiritually desperate.
Yeah.
And so we fit together really well, because she was, I would say, much stronger spiritually, and I was very hungry spiritually for something.
Yeah.
And so that relationship was very good for me. I do look back at that as a level of comfort that God gave me, someone that was stronger, more grounded in their faith, to kind of reassure me, okay, this is real, I'm on the right track, I just need to find my way through this. And I remember reading a book, it's by Richard Foster, The Something of Discipline. I wish I remember the title. We're going to look it up and then re-edit it.
There you go. It's not Disciplines of a Godly Man.
No, it's The Spirit of Discipline, or the something. And in it he describes what he called a dark night of the soul. I don't think the concept is original to
okay,
him.
you're right, yeah.
And what he says is sometimes God kind of lets you go. And in those moments, it can feel very dark, very bleak. And what he calls the Christian to do is not to give up, not to get discouraged, but really kind of, he uses the term discipline your way through it, meaning continue to read, continue to pray, continue to fellowship with other believers, continue to put yourself in a position that when God moves or works, you're there and you're ready.
Yeah.
Don't just go about life like normal, really engage those feelings and communicate that to God. And I did that for quite some time, and what changed was Jennifer and I, we had moved to Memphis at this point, and we had met a couple at Bellevue that really came alongside and mentored us, that saw what I was going through, and that affects your marriage. And so they saw what Jen was going through as a result, and the adjustment trouble we were having once we moved here. And they were kind of a support structure, I would say, that really kind of kept us on track, kept us funneled in the direction of the gospel. And we listened to a sermon series with them, and the speaker was talking on Matthew 10. And at the beginning, it's where Christ has called the disciples to himself, and he says, I'm sending you out. And it's the one where he's saying, don't acquire any provision or any gold. Go out. If you enter a town and there's a peaceful person there, stay there. But part of what he said is, don't go to any of the Gentiles, go to the lost sheep of Israel. And he says, heal the sick, go to the lepers, go to the poor, the people that have diseases, and heal them. And the point that the speaker made was that it was not a glamorous sending out. It was a go to the disease, the ones that are smelly, the ones that are struggling. And if you imagine just illnesses, the nastiness of that, or leprosy, I don't think we fully understand how gross of a disease leprosy is, where body parts are falling off.
Well, especially what it would have been in that time period before all of our modern ways of dealing with illness and disease.
Right.
The natural, clean quarantine spaces where you're like, all right, no, this is, go off to that part of
Yes.
that area over there. All of you, just stay over there. And
right.
Yeah.
And I felt like in my journey I was really onto something, and that the day was breaking, the dawn was breaking, if you will. But then I heard that, and I remember thinking, if this is what Christianity is, I don't want it. I don't want a life working with people that are ill, people that are crippled, people that may live in conditions that are dirty, filthy, smelly, dangerous, for disease spread. That if Christ were to say, this is the life, I'm sending you to it, I would say, well, I don't want it.
Yeah.
I'll go my own way. And for me, that was a very distinct line in the sand of me saying, I want what I want. I want my life to look the way I want it to. And if coming to you means giving that up and going into a life I don't want, then I don't want Christ. I don't want the gospel. I don't want the truth. I don't want any of that. If you're not going to give me what I want, I don't want it. And right on the heels of that, almost instantaneously, just made me sick. Because I felt like I'd come face to face with the truth and was saying I don't want the truth. And I'd never had that experience before. And so for someone who would call themselves a Christian to then say I don't want Christ or the truth, and then you realize, well, what am I supposed to do now? I can't just change my desires. I can't just change my emotions. I can't just say, I couldn't lie and be like, okay, yeah, I do want it, because I knew it wasn't true.
Right.
For the first time, I clearly knew it wasn't true. And we got home, and I remember just sitting on the couch, and I just felt very hopeless. I felt very lost, and I couldn't, for a few nights, I was just having trouble sleeping, because I'd wake up with these thoughts of putting myself in these Bible stories, which as a kid, you're always the hero. You're always the David. You're always the Daniel. And for the first time, I was the David, but I was walking away.
Yeah.
I was Daniel, but I was renouncing my faith, so I didn't have to go into the lion's den. This is who I was. And I couldn't eat. I was just so ill. I was just so ill. And for the first time, I felt like I was praying in a way that wasn't, God, this is what I want. Could you give it to me? God, I don't feel well. Could you comfort me? I'm not happy. Could you make me happy? But more of, God, I don't know what to do. Yeah. I've clearly seen I don't want you. I don't want the truth. I don't want a life that looks like what their lives look like in the gospel. I don't know what to do.
It's the help my unbelief kind of mentality.
Or I wasn't even that far along. I was more of, I didn't even know what to say.
Yeah.
I really felt like my prayer wasn't help my unbelief, but more just, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what to pray. I don't know what to say. I can't just act like everything's fine. I can't just say, God changed my heart. Like, it was really just, I don't know what to do. And there was no magical moment. There was no a parting of the clouds. It was just over the course of a few days, that prayer just, it became stronger, and then it became sort of just a reassurance of, okay, but you know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to pray, but you do. And if you keep going down in that passage, he talks about, I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. I'm sending you out like a sheep among wolves, all that. And instead of all that just adding fuel to the fire, making me feel worse, it started making me feel better because he was, I am sending you out. I am sending you out. And he talks about when they drag you before councils, I'll give you what to say. And it started to come up, like bubble to the surface of, I am doing this. I am doing this. And so then my prayer started to change to, God, do this in my life. God, do this in my heart. And for the first time, I started seeing that it wasn't, all right, I've got to kind of conjure up the will and the desire and the switch my priorities and my desires to match, but more, God, if you're doing this in all their lives, like do this in my life. And that was just a day or two, and I'd be at work and I'd be praying that, and it just started to become a peaceful prayer, a confident prayer of, I know you can do this, and you've done this like all throughout these people's lives, all these great heroes, like you're doing this in their life, do it in my life. And I would say that lasted for probably about the course of a week. And at the end, it was just a peace. It was just a calm. It was just a desire to then be in the Word, because as I started seeing that Matthew 10, all of a sudden you're like, I wonder what else is in this book that I missed. It's not all rosy, obviously, and some of the stories you really are reading, and I was very confused. I felt like I was digging into theology for the first time, and you're like, what does that mean? But I wanted to know what it meant for a change instead of just surface lesson, all right, let's move on.
Yeah, getting to know God, and he's just like, all right, here are my letters. Just
right. And then the fact that you're like, these are God's words, you're like, I should probably pay attention to this. This seems important.
In a similar context to how our kids kind of model to us, and we sort of see the long-suffering of our Heavenly Father, like your relationship to God, and you sort of see it in your kids, where like, I don't want you to just come to me when you need something. I want you to just want to spend time with me. I want to spend time with you. I don't want you to just see me as someone who just gives you things and just like scream when you need something across the house. I want you to, hey, like, let's spend time together because we have an actual relationship.
Right.
And God gives us those like, oh man, yeah, that's me. I'm that kid right there. Like, so like, again, it's not that you don't go, we don't do that. Like, but it does make us go, thank you. Like, I recognize who I am in this scenario. It's like a walking sermon illustration right here of my spiritual standing right here.
Right.
Anyway.
The other thing about that I appreciate, because sometimes you'll go through things in life that aren't really clear why, and he doesn't always tell you why, but he's very gracious. And as I began to look back on those times in Nashville when I was really desperate and really struggling, it was going to your point of the illustration of our kids. Sometimes your kids are just insistent on they're going to do something, and you're telling them you can't do that, and they're telling you, yes, I can. And so what do? You're like, okay, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah.
And they'll wrestle and they'll struggle. Hopefully they don't accomplish it, because if they do, you're like, oh, this is bad.
The hospital bill is going to be.
Or just, wow, I've reinforced that they can do things if they just try. But anyway, you let them struggle, you let them try, and then when they finally give up and come to you and like, you're right, I can't do it. I mean, that's exactly what was going on.
Where God lets us get to the end of ourselves.
Yes.
Like, in other words, the only time you're ever forced to look up is when you've legitimately reached rock bottom. When there's no
Yes.
further day down to look, you have to look up. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, you're exhausted, you're out of effort, you're out of strength. And that's what was going on. And so he very graciously helped me to see that, which just added so much meaning to those times. But it also gave me a story to tell.
Yeah.
That when people, my own kids, friends I have, anyone that I come into contact with, is talking about really wrestling, really struggling, confidently telling them what a beautiful time you're in, because you're on the heels of God doing something.
Yeah.
It may be days, it may be weeks, months, even years. In my life, it was over the course of several years. He's doing something.
Right.
What's scary is when everything's just tranquil and nothing's going on. Where things aren't hard, but things aren't
That
good.
sounds like an Irishman's view on life. It's like you're suspicious of good times.
Right.
You're like looking around, I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop here. What's the next sanctification chapter is going to be like? But no, I think there's a quote that I believe I've quoted in every single one of the testimonies, but it's the Spurgeon quote, I have learned to kiss the wave that throws me against the rock of ages. It's that approach to hardship and recognizing that, okay, if this drives me to further dependence on God, that will have been worth it.
Right. It's similar to, and at that time I'd read a devotion by Oswald Chambers.
Oh, I almost for his highest?
Yes.
Good one.
Where he talks about Moses on the mountain, coming off the mountain with the golden calf. And he's talking about that it's easy to worship God when things are going well, because you're grateful, you're thankful. It's easy to go to God when things are hard because you're desperate, you're struggling. But when you're halfway down the mountain, he was talking about that's when it's really hard to live out your faith.
Yeah.
Because there's no really high or low for you to want to go to God. And he's talking about how that builds your faith, those moments where things are peaceful or quiet. And that's exactly what we had coming off the heels of that experience I had had. That peace comes and that excitement about reading the Word, but then over the course of a few months, all right, I'm at work every day. Jen and I have a disagreement. Not that we have disagreements, ever.
No, never, never.
Sometimes I have to realize that, I'm right, and she has to realize that as well.
Oh!
Yes, which hasn't happened yet.
Okay, let's say.
But I'm waiting.
There you go.
I'm waiting for that moment.
For that glorious day.
Yes.
Yeah, I cling to those. I remember being in high school, my dad taught me math, and there were like 2 mistakes in the math book, and like after that, all it took was 2, and I clung to every single, like, the book could be wrong, Dad.
Yes,
The book could totally be wrong.
I'm still waiting for that moment.
It was wrong that one time.
That one time, yes. I'm still waiting for that moment.
Okay.
But it was, and then you have to just grind it out. Mm-hmm. What exciting thing is going to happen today? Well, nothing.
Yes, exciting by your definition of exciting. I agree with what you're saying.
Well, coming off the heels of a salvation type experience.
Yeah, mountaintop, and then all of a sudden you're back in the valley, and you're just like.
Well, you wake up and you're like, did I miss something? Why does stuff not feel exciting anymore? Mm-hmm. Did I? God want me to do something and I didn't? And it's like, no, just I want you to get up. I want you to put one foot in front of the other. I want you to go to work. I want you to be faithful to your wife.
Yeah.
I want you to speak of me when the opportunity presents itself. There's no fireworks. There's no giant to conquer.
Yeah.
Just daily. Get up, go to work.
And even from a spiritual warfare strategic perspective, I think that oftentimes, there's a reason that the devil has a vested interest in promoting to the culture that certain things are boring. Like my mother telling me, like she'll every now and then go on a tangent about all the ways I could have been a better mother and I've failed you all. And I'm going, Mom, like you raised 4 kids who love the Lord. They married spouses who love the Lord. You and Dad stayed together. I mean, yeah, there are incredibly godly people who can't say that.
Right.
And so there's a reason that the world wants you to think that's boring, but that's it. That's the end game.
Right.
Like I still marvel. I was at your wife's father's funeral, and that was a really important day for me because I'd come from watching Abigail. I went to the funeral, and then I went to Curtis and Darla's wedding. And
wow.
I know, full spectrum of life.
Right.
And I went to Curtis that night, and I was just like, I just want you to know, like, I saw our future this afternoon. in God's providence. Like I saw a daughter get up to a room full of people and in much more eloquent fashion say, my father loved Jesus and he loved my mother and he taught me to love Jesus.
Right.
And I'm like, that's the end game. Like,
Yeah.
so again, there's a reason the world wants you to think that's boring, but it's
Right.
not. Like, that's gardening. I think that's again, going back to the humdrum of the planting season where we're planting seeds and we're just tending the garden and we're waiting for that harvest, and it gets so tedious and we're just like looking at those carrots going, all right, come on, bring it. What do you want? And
Really,
God's like,
carrot?
no,
That's
I don't
your
know.
go-to?
I was trying to think of something that you couldn't see.
Oh, okay.
Potatoes just seemed too Irish of me. But anyway, no, the zucchini. Other vegetable metaphors. So yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. I think that there's great. I lost my train of thought, man. It was.
I'm so
beautiful
sorry.
hearing-
I know
questioning
you
my
were onto
choice of
something like
vegetable.
profound.
No, I rarely go there.
I'm so sorry.
My wife will tell you.
To all of you out there, all three
We're
of you
robbed of
watching
my
this,
brilliance.
I'm so sorry. I think they got it.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
got it. We're tracking.
Yeah.
But
But
I-
know who's giving your eulogy.
That was where you're headed?
No, but that was
Oh, I
just
was
a
like, I
random.
didn't
That was
see
sort of
that.
a random aside. Just
Understood.
As far as how we assess our lives and this notion of the humdrum of life when it all comes to an end. There's actually, I mean, again, if you pray for the harvest, but 9 times out of 10 you're called to be gardeners. So look for opportunities for the harvest. But yeah, we can really get, I don't know, get discouraged when we look around and we're really wanting to just live on the mountain.
Yes.
And praise the Lord when he gives you opportunities. I always think it's fascinating that the things that tend to give us those mountaintop-esque experiences tend to be in correlation with things that we know will be in heaven.
Really?
Music, like a music experience.
Okay.
Food, like a good meal with people.
That's so nice.
Nature. Even like good architecture, beautiful buildings or whatever, fellowship with people.
Right.
Like you think of all the things we know will be in heaven, and there's, I don't know, again, I have no theological, like, I don't know,
Imagine a
texts to point
carrot,
to.
if you will.
Shut up, Mike. No. But no, I think that there's a reason for
Right.
that, and God does give us those moments, but they're like fragmented,
They are.
and I call them Christopher Nolan trailers of glory because, oh, come on, man, Christopher Nolan. You ever watch a Christopher Nolan trailer?
Maybe. I don't know.
Like
I don't,
Batman Begins,
I don't know who that
The Dark
is, but I'm
Knight,
sure
and
I've
like
seen-
Inception, and he did like, anyway, the Oppenheimer.
Okay.
Anyway, but like you watch a trailer and it's like split-second camera shots with like a Hans
Yeah,
Zimmer
okay.
drum beat.
That makes sense,
And
yeah.
you finish it up and you're just like, I have no idea what this movie is going to be about, but it's
yeah,
Christopher
right.
Nolan. It's going to be amazing. And God gives us those little moments.
Right.
And you sort of step back and there's a book by David Gibson on Ecclesiastes where he says the world says, eat, drink, and be merry because that's all there is. And the gospel says, eat, drink, and be merry because that's what there is. In other words, they're not the thing itself, but you can appreciate them because they, in their own broken, fragmented way, point to real eternal longings
Right.
that will reach their fulfillment in Christ, in heaven,
Right.
in that marriage supper of the Lamb. And that's why we can enjoy them now, knowing that the joy won't last, knowing that it's all coupled with some element of human brokenness in our
Right.
fallen condition, but that he does give us, that he would even give us those fragmented moments of joy. Yeah, it's like we reversed it. I tend to struggle with the same sort of thing where I feel like I'm in the valley, just like, why can't I have another mountaintop?
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, but again, that he would even give us one of those
Right.
should make us sing his praises. Absolutely.
It's interesting because what you were talking about with he gives us those glimpses as a grace, but I remember you read the Bible and sometimes it feels like all of their life were these mountaintops, right? So you read about Paul or David but we miss the stories where David is talking about this is the darkest day.
Yeah, my son's trying to take over my kingdom, and I'm trying to not, anyway, yeah.
Or I walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many of us are gonna?
And Paul
say-
writing these like theological treatises, like chained to a guard.
Right, right.
He's not living his best life
Right.
now.
Right.
So,
But even that, I remember a friend of mine saying, with their highs and lows and their closeness to God, what about when he's writing a letter to the church in Corinth? All those people, that they're just a Corinthian. That's all they are. And they're getting this letter, and Paul is saying, there's some real issues, you need to deal with it. What about the members of that church that stood up and took his letter and implemented it and said, we need to fix this? What if you're just a Corinthian? What if you're just a Galatian? You're not Paul traveling around, but God is saying you're just a member of a church that needs to ensure that the truth is getting told, that proper discipline is being enforced, those things. Because Jen and I, after that, immediately were thinking, okay, what's the big thing we do for God now? Now that he's called us to himself, what monumental effort and task are we going to do? Mm-hmm. And all the roads that we applied to the mission field and had several appointments that just didn't work out. And so at the end of that, when none of that works out, and you're thinking, well, what are we going to do now? I was reading in Exodus where God sent the people, it wasn't Exodus, it was, I don't remember what book, but it's where the people have been sent into exile. And all the prophets are telling them, you're only going to be here a short time. Just go ahead and have all your stuff packed up and ready because God's going to deliver you soon. And God sent another prophet to say, you're going to be here a while. So plant vineyards, build homes, live in your homes. And he said, because you will find your welfare in the welfare of the city that I put you. And so for Jen and I, that was a good reassurance of God saying, I'm going to send you somewhere. I want you to plant. I want you to invest for however long I leave you there. And as that community that surrounds you prospers because of your being there, you'll find your own prosperity, not in a material sense, but in the spiritual sense, as you invest in where I've sent you. And so I think that kind of completed the package for us, where we said, we don't have to go to the mission field. We don't have to give all of our stuff away immediately. We don't have to be monks in a cave or anything like that. Follow where he sends you, invest where he puts you, and that's all he asks us to do. And so for us, going to work, having quiet time with our kids, coming to church and being faithful members, that's it. And I don't mean that's it and like, oh, well, that's it, but that's it, meaning that's what he's called us to.
There's a reason that the devil has a vested interest in us thinking that's boring or that's not enough.
Or just seeing the gratitude in, work was hard today, but I had a job to go to. Or, because last week was brutal. Man, it was brutal.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was tough. It was like 107 or 8 every day. But then coming home and saying, I have a house that's cool. You know, I'm eating lunch and like sweating on my sandwich and thinking this will end. There's an end. Being like finding those little things he's giving you to be grateful for. And I think that after that salvation experience, after the coming to grips with, well, maybe God didn't call us to some wonderful, huge task, but just a normal life that's faithful, has been where we've been for the last decade. And honestly, I couldn't have been more grateful. And I look back on that decade and think, it's been the best decade of my life, easily.
Praise the Lord.
And so I think that helps put the bow on what he started.
That's great.
And now I'm sitting here with you.
Which just...
a real high point.
Really puts
real high point.
The bow upon the bow. No.
Oh, my word. It's the carrot
I
on
knew
top.
a carrot was showing up at some point. Oh, boy.
On top of the... or underneath the soil. You're the carrot under my soil.
Let's not.
Okay.
That's the tagline of the episode on the thumbnail.
But no, and then the opportunity to just share it. And hopefully people are going, if they're going through something hard or they're going through something indifferent, I think indifference can be one of the greatest enemies to our walk. If they're going through that, of just being reassured that you didn't miss anything, you didn't get anything wrong, you're probably exactly where God wants you, and now you got to grit it out when the world's telling you, but wouldn't this make you happy, and wouldn't this make you happy, and maybe a new church would do it, or maybe a new job, and you're wrestling and fighting against where God wants you because you don't feel anything.
Yeah. No, I take great solace in the different lives of the disciples that Christ called around himself. Like all of the different jobs and life experiences that were present, which the more you kind of delve into how different their life experiences actually were, it totally makes more sense as you get to know people when you read things like they were fighting amongst themselves who was the greatest.
Right.
Like we think of that in terms of like, no, I'm the greatest, but no, it was more like you don't understand what I've been through, and this is the skill set I bring to the table is this, and you're nothing but a tax, whatever the thing is. But that's us, that's the church. And again, like we'll look at people who are doing great things for God, and we're just like, well, yeah, but again, each of the disciples had different skill set,
Right.
and God knew exactly what He was doing. And there's solace in that too. Like we're all the body of Christ, and we fulfill different functions. That's wonderful. So yeah, I mean, even the notion you said that at this juncture God hasn't called to be missionaries, but you're on the missions team. So
Right.
it's not that therefore you should have nothing to do with missions.
Right.
No, like there is a way to
Right.
be involved, even if God hasn't called you at this juncture to sell everything and head overseas. Right. So yeah, absolutely.
It's funny. A friend of mine pointed out, I've taken the same lunch to work for 11 years, 12 years, turkey and cheese. It's my go-to. It's like your carrot. Your carrot, that's my turkey and cheese. But he was laughing because he said, how would you operate on the mission field? Every day is different. He's like, variety isn't necessarily your strength. And I was
knows you well, doesn't he?
I was thinking like, okay, but you said God makes people with different personalities, different skills. My skill is like, I don't need variety. I don't need change. Maybe that means that you're not like overseas waking up, what do I do today? I don't know what today will look like, but I'm at work eating my turkey and cheese, serving in other ways.
I've got the same sandwich at Firehouse Subs all 15 years of being in Memphis.
That's
and my wife will go in and she'll be like, do you want to try something different? I'm like, no. She goes, why? I'm like, this should be in my favor. Like, I find what I like and I'm faithful to it. Let's just let the record show.
Isn't that right, Rachel? Well, that's my apologies.
No, you're fine.
I overstepped my boundaries.
You're fine.
Rachel, you're wonderful, I'm sure. But no, we've come to embrace the wherever He sends, whatever He does, and I look back at how He started, and even if it takes 15 years, however long, I mean, the timetable's irrelevant. And so there's several times where we'll think, if we could have only known this sooner, we could have done this sooner. But I don't think God's like, oh, you're right. I missed that window I had. I mean, and so there's a comfort there in that journey, I would say. The timing's been perfect.
Yeah.
The rate at which things happen, the order at which they happen, everything was just right. And so, and now we're here. We're at GCC talking to Philip. So, highlight.
Well, y'all are an incredible blessing to this church.
Well, thank
you for embodying that notion of planting roots and digging deep and investing in relationships. We are definitely the beneficiaries of that in multiple, in grand ways and small ways. Like there's a cartoon that your daughter drew of my wife and my daughter I have framed right over here.
Oh, wonderful.
So there's a lot of skill sets in your family. It's a blessing to see your kids grow. So thank you for all you do for our church, and thank you for sharing. That's an incredible blessing. Well, even if we'll never talk about carrots in the same way. It'll be like our own inside joke and the people who watch this.
That's right. That's right.
That's what you're going to get, is people walking up talking about carrots.
Oh, man.
Nothing about the gospel.
It'll be confusing at first. But that's okay.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. I appreciate it.